Holy cow, Chad. That was a vibe song. I'm gonna be honest. That was a vibe to come in on the podcast. Episode 35 of the Bear Market Builders. Holy cow, man. We're getting up there. I say that every episode, but man, bro, we ran like 15 podcasts in the last month. What are we doing? But today we're here with Hannah. What's up, Hannah?
All good, chat. What about you?
I'm good. I'm good. Man, it's been a long weekend. I'm gonna be honest. It was a long weekend, but we're back. We're back in locked in, grinding stage now. So it's only up. It's only up.
Yeah,
W.
no, the I feel you on the long weekend. Um, Maybe this is something that we'll get to talk about, but basically there's this little project that I was running where I accidentally bought like 1,500 envelopes for a for like there was this collection that I was working on, but I completely missed the wrong size of the envelopes, and I didn't really want to waste that. The return window kind of closed, and so I decided to turn them into art anyway, and I got them all sorted and I was giving them away around New York. So for the past week, I was just kind of getting through all of those envelopes. And for the past weekend, I was just at different parks around New York City passing out like free art.
Huh.
So it was a lot. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it's up only. Charts are back up
A little bit.
a little bit. So
Yeah.
small wins.
Yeah. It was a rough weekend for sure for the charge. Holy cow. It was red the whole weekend, man. It was so bad, but it's okay. It's okay, yo. It's gonna go up. It was, we just buy. We just buy these dips, then we're gonna make money. We're gonna make money for sure. Not financial
And this
advice.
is called the bear market builder chat for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, bro. We're not in that bull market yet. See, I named it the bear market builders because I can change it to the bull market builders whenever. But right now we're still in that bear market. So, we're bringing on dope people every single week, about 2 to 3 times a week, where we just talk and meet some cool people, who are actually building something cool. So we brought you on, Hannah. Happy episode 35 or whatever we're on now. Holy cow.
Happy to be here.
W. So Hannah, for those people that don't know who you are, how about you give them a little info about yourself?
For sure, yeah. So, hi, I'm Hana Knight. I'm a mixed media artist who works mainly with dried flowers. I do for digital HTML works. I do a bit of poetry, creative writing, lore building, um, dabble in a little bit of like photography and like abstract on the side, but mostly been doing a lot more of the art, visual art, and poetry for the past 2+ years now. Um, I aside from that, I also have a creative storytelling world project that I'm co-founded. That's been running now for a good 2 years as well. It's called the Nocturne. So that's kind of like my main two entries when I first came into Solana. Independent creator, do a little bit of content writing and videos every now and then. I like to bring magic to people around me with like experiences. I bring
Mm-hmm.
a physical gacha machine. Some people know me as like the gacha girl. When I go to IRL events, I bring this tabletop gumball machine where people can roll for physical goodies or NFT prizes. And yeah, I think I just believe in the power of bringing fun and making memories with
Mm-hmm.
people through creativity and using culture and community to kind of push forward technology and vice
Dang.
versa, I guess. But yeah.
That was lit. What? Man, that's like one of my favorite like intros ever. Bro, that was so dope. Man, experiences are big in life. Like that's like one of my favorite things is bro, I want to be able to just have enough money. I don't even care if I'm rich. Like I don't care if I have, the nicest car. I don't care if I have the nicest house. I just want to go places. I want to travel the world, make cool experiences, go to concerts, everything with just my family and friends. That's why I'm trying to, make a bag now. Hopefully I do become rich so I can just go, do stuff like that for the rest of my life, especially while I'm young. So, yeah, bro. Have you always been like that? Have you always, loved experiences, or have you always, or when you were younger, did you want the biggest or nicest car and the biggest house?
And I think it's always been about at the end of the day, it is about the experiences. But like you said, like just the very fact that the world we live in operates with money as like a medium of exchange for goods and
Hmm.
services, and ultimately like the experiences that you are able to like gain for yourself, it is hard to just kind of like be blind to that and say that it doesn't matter, because of course it does, but mostly as just the as a way to get to the other priceless things in life,
Hmm.
right? Like it's expensive. You could call it. It is the way that someone had put to me once is that unfortunately a lot of the priceless things in life are expensive,
Hmm.
because it's either you pay with money or you pay with your time and energy, right? And I think those are the three things, the three main like resources or the currencies that we have. It's either you choose. It's the joke or like the golden rule is that you would use two of those three to get the other. So if you don't
Hmm.
have money, you use your time and effort to get it. If you don't have time, you use your money and effort to like carve out time or to like
Hmm.
alleviate other things so that you get the blah blah blah. And then if you don't have effort or like manpower or resources to like help you, you would use your time and money to get that. So it's just kind of like
Yeah,
this
it's just
sort
one
of
big
golden
circle.
trifecta. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, what's been like one of your favorite experiences that you've ever had in life?
Okay, that's such a big question in life.
W question.
Yeah. So there was this in college, during my undergrad, there's this speaker dinner series that my school had every academic year, where from Monday to Thursday we had um, a different like speaker, expert, whatever you call it.
Hmm.
They come in to give a talk on like their area of expertise, and during that time, like we have dinner. Like the speaker also comes in and has dinner with like the students. But of course, like we're split up into different tables, so not everyone has the chance to sit at the table where the speaker is. But that year, I was one of the student fellows who was, you get to apply to be like one of the
Hmm.
student hosts for that academic year to facilitate and to kind of like be the host for the speaker. And
Hmm.
I remember that one of the speakers that really left an impact on me and really like changed my perspective was this wonderful, brilliant woman. Her name is Haben Girma, and she's the first deaf-blind woman who graduated Harvard Law. And I had just the most amazing, unexpectedly amazing dinner experience because yeah, I was one of the fellows, so I got to sit at the head table where we had dinner together. And the way that she communicated with us was it was so cool. Like I didn't really know what to expect,
Hmm.
because normally, when we have conversations at the table, we talk
Yeah.
and we eat,
Yeah.
whatever. But she was like deaf and blind. And so we communicated through this like Bluetooth braille keyboard where we would type on one keyboard and she would receive it on this other keyboard and she would put her hand on it. So it's like in real time, like these braille, like a braille translation of
Uh huh.
what we were typing would appear in real time to her, and she would feel it as we were typing. And
Huh.
we got to ask our questions like that. And so we would also, everyone at the table who we were typing, but also like verbalizing what we were typing so that everyone else who were hearing could listen to what it is that we were typing. And
Hmm.
it was just like I didn't think of I guess like yeah, because I came in with not sure what to expect, and it was just really like just the fact that we are at that level of like technology and like the creativity that it showed me like how technology is used for something so it's like there were just so many layers to the interaction.
Hmm.
First is like thinking about how privileged we are, that like some basic sense of like hearing, talking, listening, seeing, whatever. It's just a lot of times like a lot of us take it for granted.
Hmm.
But even then, like the fact that we now are living in an age where assistive technology levels out that playing field so much, just like I knew they existed, but just being there and interacting, having that firsthand experience was also crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
then furthermore, like her talk, it was titled like inclusive design. And in my head, I was kind of like, yeah, of course, it's like no brainer. Of course, like we want to be inclusive when we design things or products or experiences, whatever services. Like we want to be inclusive, like of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then just the experience of it, like how she talked about her journey, um, growing up and then like going through like overcoming and like going through law school and now like where she is and everything. It was just fascinating. Like she made it bigger than herself, which I thought was also like so brilliant.
Yeah.
So she didn't just talk about how like, look at me like doing all these things despite like what I was born with or whatever. Like she made it way beyond herself. But she said and the way she talked about it wasn't even like it wasn't condescending. It was just it was like talking to a friend. And she talked about how so many of the things that we see every day were actually designed by people who quote unquote had disabilities, but because they designed it to help like even I guess it's like when you talk about inclusive design, it's like when you cater to even these small groups of people, you never know how much it can benefit like the majority as well. So like the
Yeah.
example she gave was like the email was actually the first email. I don't remember the exact like facts about this, so feel free to fact check me after this. But um, the first email was created by someone who was deaf, and this came about soon after the first telephone was made because people who were deaf, like that person who was deaf, wanted to also be able to communicate in real time with their friends and their
Yeah.
family, but the telephone wouldn't serve them because they wouldn't be able to hear that. So they thought, okay, well, what if we could do the same thing, like the same concept for written things instead of just hearing things?
Yeah.
And that was how the first few prototypes of emails came about. And now it's not just deaf people who are using emails, it's also people who, like you and me, like, halfway across the world, we're sending emails to each other. And
Yeah.
I just think that that whole experience is probably it clicked something in me about how we look at the world. Like people talk about design thinking and like product design or like whatever and as like a profession or as a job. But really it's like the way you look at things. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that night was when it kind of clicked in my brain that it shifted from just being a line of work to a way of thinking, a way of looking at the world, a way of experimenting and observing and being and co-creating in society and like the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, so that sounds like one night that like kind of like changed your life like forever. Like you learn a lot of there, there's those nights that you always remember, and sometimes those nights are bad, they teach you things, and sometimes those are also good nights that, teach you a lot of things about life. And that girl obviously taught you about, you can't take things for granted, because bro, I think that's a big thing. I always talk about that on the podcast too. That's like what I say, like one of the biggest things I've learned ever was just don't take the little things for granted, because when you lose them, you never know, like, you never know how much they really mean to you until you lose it. And that's important. A lot about art and, like, like you said, design. And there's one more thing, but I forget. But while we're talking about some things that you've learned in life. Okay, brain fart right there. I'm gonna be honest, I blanked out. But while we're talking about some things that you've learned in life, what is like one of the biggest lessons that you've ever learned in life? It could be through creating your art. It could be just in life in general.
I think this was actually something that I was thinking about recently because I had like a long post, or I don't know if it'll be a long post thread, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know if it's like the biggest thing I've learned, but I can share with you something recent that I've been thinking a lot about that like was reminded to me through that envelope experience as well. And just, I think it's kind of like there's uh, creativity is a muscle. You
Hmm.
People always talk about like finding inspiration and like, oh, I'm just not feeling inspired right now, or like I don't really have the ideas, like it's not coming to me. I'm just trying to wait for inspiration to strike. And part of it is like, oh, I'm waiting for the right time and all that. And I think at the end of the day, creativity is a muscle, the same way that you work out in the gym to train your muscles. Inspiration is where you look for it because you're not you're at the end of the day trying to train your brain. Constantly rewiring your brain to develop skills, habits, whatever. That it's an active thing, and you're not going to just have inspiration or like creative ideas just kind of like fall on your lap. Like you
Hmm.
have to actively seek it, actively try to make these connections and try to like observe and be curious and ask yourself like, oh, what would I do differently, or what can I do with this? um and so just going to like the little envelope story I told you at the start of this podcast, like when I first stared at the envelopes, like people always think of envelopes as just like you put stuff inside it,
Hmm.
right? And then I was like, well, I have some paint, I have a printer. What can I do with this that doesn't put the envelopes to waste? Like we're talking like 1,500 envelopes, right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't just want to donate. I could have just like donated them to like a local arts center or something.
Hmm.
I could have just like trashed it even, which like would have been an absolute waste. But it's like, well, what if the envelope becomes the art piece? What if the envelope becomes the card? And what if we made the vessel be just as beautiful as like the contents or something? And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, what can I do with what I have? And I think that's little acts of creativity that contribute to that muscle that you're training, right? Like you don't always
Hmm.
want to wait for like something big to happen before you get it doesn't I guess like you don't have to wait for something big to happen or for to be doing something big just to like call it like, okay, this is the right time, like this is the right idea or whatever. It's just like it is little things like this that make up so the little things that make up eventually like the big things. Like you're training your brain to be creative, you're training your eyes to look for opportunities, to
Yeah.
do things, to experiment. And I don't know if that was a I don't know if this is like the biggest life lesson, like I said, but it is something recent that like I'm reminded of. Like I didn't think I was gonna be able to do it. Like I didn't think I was gonna be able to use up 1,500 envelopes.
Yeah.
And here we are. Like I was out giving bundles of like envelope art to random people around like Central Park, around Madison Square Park, around like Soho, and just
Yeah.
yeah, it was like I really didn't think I did do it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. That's great. Man, how do you, for people that are watching and, want to exercise that part of their brain, how do you think they can? How do you think they can go and just exercise their creativity, and you know what I mean?
That's a bit that's a bit broad again, but
Oh,
and this is gonna sound a little cliche probably, but it's really about like how to exercise creativity. Well, first of all, it kind of depends on you, like what works for you. Like I'm a lot more extroverted than like some friends or family members that I know. So I don't have a problem. Like, okay, it was a little scary to think that I was going to be approaching strangers and be like, "Hi, would you like some free art?" Like that was scary.
yeah.
But then um I think one way to kind of think about like getting over that fear, or like at the end of the day your main blocker is kind of yourself.
Yeah.
And it helps to I think it helps to just kind of like take a deep breath and tell yourself that, you know what, the worst that could happen is they say no, or the worst that could happen is that this idea fails. And by fails, it's like it just goes back to the status quo. Like there's no net negative for that experience if you don't try it or if you don't experiment. And like, I mean, hopefully not, but but if you're able to just push yourself to tell you like tell you just like it's so corny to say like, just do it or whatever because it's sometimes not as simple as like wanting to just go do it. But I do think that remaining curious about uh, when you see an opportunity, when you see something, you don't just look at it like, oh, okay, cool, full stop, end of story.
Hmm.
You think of it's practicing your brain to think in a way that's like, okay, well, what if this? How about that? Maybe XYZ instead of A, what if B? And just kind of allowing yourself to, this is so corny, but it's like, think like a child. Like, children never think that there's anything wrong about, like, they're
Yeah.
not afraid of, like, the social pressure of, like, oh, that's wrong. Like, I think we always, we're too afraid of being wrong because of like our being of like the perception that other people have of us that like we're somehow more deficient if like we made a mistake. But really it's like you made a mistake, like it was an act, like it's not you as a person that is like lacking, right? So
Yes.
it's just kind of like being being serious doesn't mean always taking yourself seriously, and I think
Hmm.
like laugh a lot, laugh at yourself, like laugh
Yes.
at your, okay, yeah, maybe I'm gonna try this, and it's like maybe it'll go well, maybe it doesn't, and like, lol, that was funny.
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't.
know, I mean, it's not like I know how to do that for myself too. Like, just one more point before you get to your like yours, what you were gonna say earlier, that I I also still like feel like, oh my God, what if like this post doesn't go viral? What if this idea like, isn't polished enough, so I have to refine it first, and then people can't see this draft yet because it's not yet polished and ready. And
Yeah.
but I don't know, just reminding yourself that the worst that could happen is they say no.
Hmm. Yeah, man. I think that goes for a lot of things. Like, too many people don't chase what they truly want. They don't go for their dreams because they're scared of what other people think. And that's really messed up. You just go through the motions. And actually, I was watching this movie last night. It's called Living on Netflix. And it's about this old man who finds out he has cancer. And after he finds out, he kind of realizes that he's just been going through the motions. And then he starts living life, and it really shows like when you just go for stuff, when you go for whatever you want and you just you start living you start being yourself around people. You I don't know, you're more happy. You don't like when you try to fake yourself for other people, it's depressing. You get really sad in life because you're not able to be yourself, and bro, it just sucks, man. It just sucks. And I feel like that, I mean, a lot of kids my age too have dreams. Like I'm 15.
Wait, what? Take that back. Like, how old do you think I am that you're saying like kids your age?
Dang, are you
But
15? I
actually,
don't
don't
know.
answer that.
No, I mean,
Actually, don't answer
I
that.
don't think you're
Continue.
old. I don't think you're old. I think you're like probably 20s. But
Okay, cool.
whoa, okay. But nah, like kids my age, like I was just thinking about school there. Like I don't know, like I
Mhm.
know a bunch of people that have dreams and want to chase them, but they're scared of what other kids think. And it sucks. Like social media, I feel like has ruined that for people. Like they don't know that failure is a good thing, and they're scared to hear what other people think. So I don't know. It's just you got to go for stuff.
I will say that to your point, like there, yeah, like the whole idea of like so peer pressure, like it's not limited to just like teens. Of course, like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of middle school, high school, like that period of one's life is very much more um impressionable, and it's a little more like there's more tension there because it's like precisely because that's the age where you are trying to figure yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, that is exactly why you should be even more um willing to experiment and to try, because that is the biggest, like that period is the biggest like grace period that you have, or like, not you, but people in
Yeah.
general. That's exactly the period to like experiment. Like you should be trying and whatnot, right? And of course, like making mistakes is okay. I will quantify like making mistakes is one thing, but then making new mistakes is even more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that like when people say like, "Oh, you're making you made a mistake," like what you should be fearful of is making the same mistakes. Like it's okay to
Twice.
make mistakes,
Yeah.
and then maybe that is like the way that we need to think about it more, right? Like you're not. It's okay to make mistakes, just don't make the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's you should be making a new mistake every day. Almost, like
Yeah.
if not, then you're not taking risk, you're not challenging yourself, you're not growing. Your bubble is just staying stagnant, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's something, and that's even scarier than making a mistake. The fact that you're not making mistakes almost.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It just I've made a lot of mistakes. You know, I know you've made a lot of mistakes, and the people that are successful have made a lot of mistakes. It's just how you get up. You know, it's how you take it. It's how you learn from it, and you gotta just go up from there. You can't let it go down. You know, or
Yeah, for
you
sure.
can't tear yourself down because of it.
Mhm.
You know, while we're talking about kids my age, you know, I don't think you're too old. I don't think you're crazy. I think you're 20. Okay, I don't think you're old.
Okay.
What was your what was your childhood like? What did you like to do when you were a child?
I really liked reading. Like I
Nerd,
loved
nerd.
reading. I loved exploring things, and I think like I'm the eldest child of two eldest childs. Like my mom and dad are also both like eldest childs in their family. Um, and I think they were both very they never treated me like a kid in the sense that um and maybe it's because I'm like their first child. So it was like I would go with them to do a lot of like adult things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go with them to like there was this Toyota's design exhibition, and it was just like it was things like that that made me. I think that like influenced a lot of like how I grew up, being like staying curious, being excited about learning new things, about making new mistakes, and just kind of like seeing and learning from the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think those like when I said like being curious, it's just like being seeking knowledge and um seeking things that were new, and also just kind of like thinking about them and like bringing it all together, like understanding how things how work together, how these different understanding and like discovering connections between like different things in life, like um I was never really like a science kid, but then I
Mm-hmm.
did a triple science like program during like my middle school and high school. Like my interest has always been more on like stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not just creative stories, but even like I see history as like basically a big story about the world. And even when you talk about like politics and like international relations, like the history of like the world and all that, like those are stories, like these are
Yeah.
human stories, like psychology, economics, like it's like stories that explain something or reveal something about like people. But to the point of science, like I was never like a big science kid, but I think that it was just still something there, like there was just still something to be learned, and I think that there's always still something to be excited about. And I think I owe it a lot to that childhood experience of growing up with parents who encouraged that curiosity and
Mm-hmm.
that excitement for learning is really kind of like a big factor that shaped me. It was, like it still translates to now. Like a lot of people have always told me, and especially like I don't know how much the audience is following like the little Hana level up summer arc that like I've been posting about, but some people have DM'd me and asked like some friends are like, Hana, what are you doing? Like what are you like you're taking on all these random side quests almost. Like what skill are you trying to grow? Like you're cooking, you're also doing this like jewelry thing, like you're also like shucking sea urchins. Like what are you doing? And I, and the way I kind of just explain it is like I think I'm just yeah, I am on my little side quest arc because I think like all of these skills will one day come together
Mm-hmm.
and like somehow, and I don't know yet how, but I think that first of all it's cool. Um
Yeah.
and I think that there is something to be learned from just that fact alone, like being curious about like, well, what does it take to create like metal jewelry from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and like, how will that help me? I don't know. Maybe I want to make some like rings for like the Nocturne one day. Like maybe, like I'm gonna make some like flower rings for like Hana art. Like I don't know yet, but for now, it's just kind of these side quests are contributing to the main quest,
Yeah.
and it'll get there somehow one day.
Yeah. For sure. Where do you think you would be if your parents did not, encourage you to be so, outgoing and curious?
I think it's very easy to conform or um fall into the rhythm of being like a cog in a machine in like the big structure of like what society was kind of designed to be, with
Mm-hmm.
like here's your very standard trajectory of like this is what you're expected to do at this time of life, and like you go to school K to 12 and you go to university and you go to and you like find a job that like is stable, pays you well, like just stick to this lane, like you know it'll work. And some people might argue that I am still like in the bigger, like from the outside, if you didn't like talk to me directly or like learned about me more deeply, like you could argue that like my life does follow some sort of trajectory like that. Like it certainly hasn't like been a crazy deviation from like the standard, like okay, you just
Yeah.
you go through these certain stages. But I think like the experiences that I've created for myself, like the journey, the path that I have created for myself, isn't as like typical as a lot of the people or friends from like that I've grown up with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's been a lot richer with a lot of like detours and a lot of like branching out of like I said, like the way to put it, like side quests.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe if I didn't have that kind of childhood, that kind of foundation, I probably would have been a bit more of a boring version of myself. I don't know. I'd probably be a little more boring. I probably wouldn't be here sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be making as much art as I have decided to carve time for myself. Like I probably would have been fine, but I think I would have been a little more boring than what I am now.
Yeah. You would have been boring, Hannah, and no
Yeah, I would
one,
have been
no one
boring.
likes boring Hannah.
Yeah. Thank God for not boring Hannah.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't. Boring people are just not the best. I'm gonna be honest. I love when people are upbeat, and that's what I try to be every day. I try to be, because when you're upbeat, you're usually a bright spot in someone's day. You know. So I'm not. I wouldn't even be surprised if someone watching this podcast, you just made them, smile today, and that's the best thing. That's why I stream. That's why I do content creation. Why do you create art? Do you do it to make people happy, or what's the purpose of your art, in your opinion?
So So what's the purpose of creating art is, I think, a big meta question, but that I don't know if I could answer that, but I can tell you that why I create art is actually the opposite of what you said. Like, you said like, oh, creating art to make people happy. I think I create to make like I want people to cry when they see my art. Like
Okay.
I want
Okay.
people I want people to like feel things and to think things. And I mean like I don't mean cry in like the way that like I'm bullying them and like I want them to like be like sad because of that, but I want them to I think I create art because I feel like I have something to say about what it means to be human and what it means to experience life and to like share that experience, like that, those feelings and those thoughts. Um, I want to challenge how people think about things. I want them to think about things. And the themes that my visual work especially like tends to revolve around is a lot of thoughts about like the complex relationship between pain and hope, the kind of feelings that the what it means to kind of create physical, like be in a physical space and to experience something physical and blending that, and how much of that should be blended into like the digital space, and what it's like to grow up in like a third culture community, like what is culture and like how do we connect with others and how do we process things that are internal with ourselves, and all of these things like I think are questions or themes that I try to bring a perspective to. And I hope that throughout that, people might feel something, might think something. And if I've made someone cry with my poetry, if I've made someone cry because they saw my physical flower art and went like, bam, and like they tear up, like I'm like, yeah, I think I think I think I've succeeded in something, small
Yeah.
letter as successful, maybe not yet big letter as successful, but I think that's why I create. Um, and on the other hand, like why I write stories. Okay, I do write stuff that I hope makes people cry in a good way.
Hmm.
But I also the story writing part, like the creative writing part of what I do is I do hope people feel excited about imagining and about like hoping and dreaming, like I think a
Yeah.
lot of books, when people say like what makes a good book, especially like when you're older now, and what kind of stories or like writing that you're reading, it like there's this expectation that you have to be serious about, oh, it's an article on the Wall Street Journal, it's an opinion piece on the Economist, it's an article about what's happening in the finance world, in the markets, in like some country in the world or whatever, and you have to be serious, you have to be reading like biographies of all these like serious people and like learn like life lessons.
Yeah.
But I think that fiction can also be just as valuable, in teaching you something and making you excited about life. And so maybe I do try to, at the end, maybe I do just want to make, like, I write and I create art in general, like, so that to make people feel things and to make them think about things.
I like that. Yeah. See, usually people would just be like, "Oh yeah, I made. I just do it because I want people to be happy." But no, you actually like answered it, and I respect that. You like were real with it, and I like that. Hannah, how did it feel to fillet a fish? I just saw that on your Twitter. How did it feel? I just scrolled down because I was looking for some pieces that I could show.
Yeah.
But nah, how was that? Was that lit?
It was okay. I can share you some pieces that you can like some art stuff that you can share. It's like the Han alphabets. That's like the latest collection that I have up. But the about the fish, it's like the in theory I've always known like yeah okay like slide your knife or whatever. But I think the real secret in the kitchen is the knife. Like it's just your tools. Like if you have a solid knife, it's like that's 50% of the work done.
Mm-hmm.
Like maintaining your tools. And maybe this is like some life lesson analogy to like bigger thing like other things in life as well, but it's just like having like sharpening your tools, like your tool set, whether it's like an actual like knife or it's like your writing skills or your talking public speaking skills or like whatever tool
Mm-hmm.
you have, like that's half the battle already. So
Wasn't
like
didn't like Abraham Lincoln say like if he had to cut down a tree in like 6 hours, he would spend the first five sharpening his axe or something? I feel like that.
something
I
maybe
feel like he said
maybe
that. Hold on, I'm gonna look that up. But go ahead.
I definitely did not, that was not something that I was trying to like paraphrase. Like it was just like um That was me trying to be original, but I guess Abe Lincoln beat me to it.
Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first four sharpening the axe. Okay.
All right, there we go. But yeah, the short answer is it was it was fun. Now I feel like I could. It was fun, but it also like gives you a whole new perspective on cooking as a craft, as an art form. Because holy shit, like I saw other people in the class like absolutely just decimating their fish. Like I was like, wow, that's a whole lot of waste of flesh and like
Mm-hmm.
fillet. But you know what? All in the name of learning. I was just
For sure.
now I can like we can go fishing. If all else, if crypto fails, I'll take you out fishing and we can like start a
Woo!
little fishmonger booth in the
Let's
local
go.
market. Like I got you.
Let's go. Okay, yeah. I'll keep that in mind actually, just in case like I fail and everything, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know where
Yeah.
to go now. Okay,
Hmm.
so can you cook, Hannah? See, I'm
Can
so off
follow a
topic
rest.
now.
Like
Can you
I
cook?
can't. No, no, you're super fine. Um, I if you meant it literally, I think I'm decent. Like I can fix up a pretty solid like meal.
W.
I make a pretty mean pork cutlet though, like
Sounds
tonkatsu, like
good.
the breaded pork cutlets.
Yeah.
Like I have friends in this space who can testify to that. Um, but I mean, if you scroll down, I think like I cook pretty hard with my long posts. Not if I may say so myself, but
W. Okay.
um, but yeah.
Speaking of Web3 friends, also I want to hit on this because they were actually the ones that recommended you. How did you meet Schaefer and Light? Because they speak so highly of you and to me. So I was like, oh yeah, I have to get Hannah on. So how did you meet them actually?
So this is this story goes way back. I've been friends with Light pretty early on in the space. Like I was writing lore and helping with the admin, like branding, marketing strategy, whatever, of this little series collection by Diff, who is
Diff's the
also the
goat.
artist for. Yeah, so I go way back with Diff as well. Like before Bad Environment Club, like Diff had his one of one collection that is currently on pause, and I think Light found us through Bounty Heads, and we chatted, became friends, bonded over like anime and just like branding and content and just the whole like trying to do something cool and meaningful in the space and just kind of really vibed.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess like from there we just became friends. Um, did a did a bunch of not really a bunch, but we did a few Twitter spaces together. Had a lot of like brainstorm sessions together, just kind of like talking and bouncing off ideas. And then Light had shared with me a few of the earlier versions of what is now Bad Environment Club. And so I met Schaefer in the context of knowing that he works closely with Light. And this is a little more of a funny story because I was at the Solana Summer Nashville event
Still
like
on a
last year. It was
Summerfest,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it was like summer last year. Oh, sorry, not summer, like March-ish last year.
Hmm.
And like Schaefer, so I had these custom Air Force Ones that I had a friend customize for me that was in the spirit and in the aesthetic of G Dragon's Paranoise. I don't know if you got like people in the audience are familiar with this, but I absolutely love G Dragon's like creative vision. And so like when the
Hmm.
Paranoids came out, my size, I have tiny feet, I have tiny hands. I'm also a girl, so that makes it extra small. But it was just really hard to to get on the primary market for that pair of shoes.
Hmm.
So I was just kind of like, okay, I kind of gave up like first week when it was released. So I've always wanted to have a Paranoise. I got a custom of it, close enough. And Schaefer came up to me during Solana Summerfest and was just like, hey, I like your shoes. Are those the Paranoids? And I was just like, oh, thank you. Like, no, they're not the Paranoids, but I got my friend to customize it for me in the spirit of it, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, that's really cool. And he walked away. And
Sounds like Schaefer.
I was like, what? Wait, well, what's your name? And he was just like, oh, hi, I'm Schaefer. And I was like, oh my God, you're Schaefer? You were really gonna walk away and just like tell me like, hello, you're like nice shoes and leave? And he was like, what's your name? And I was like, oh, I'm HanaKnight. And he's like, wait, what the fuck, you're HanaKnight? And I was just like, you just like said nice shoes and left? And he was just like, I don't know, I'm shy. And I was like, oh my God, like I was going to not know the entire like 3 days that we had there. And I was just like, bro, what?
Sounds like Schaefer.
And that's how I met Shaver, yeah.
Yeah, they're goats.
Essentially.
I've had both of them on this podcast.
Yeah, I saw.
They're super dope. They're super dope. Man,
That's
see,
how
that's so Schaefer.
that's the long-standing that's a long-standing friendship that I've had with Light, and then the absolutely banger of a story that about how I met Shaver.
Yeah, yikes, man. Yikes. Okay, so yeah, we got like 10 minutes left.
Mhm.
So okay, let's talk about what's the project Nocturne?
Nocturne, yeah.
Nocturne. Can you give us a little more, info on what Nocturne is and, when it launched and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, so it started right now, essentially the little like 2-second elevator pitch is that we're trying to reimagine the ways that people experience stories. It's in a way this like the end goal of it, or like the big overarching like moonshot vision of what the Nocturne could be is this the ultimate form of like an ARG, like an alternate reality game, or an immersive like physical digital story world universe that uses like multi-platform story release. And what I mean by that is kind of like when you think about stories nowadays, it's always very like single medium. Like it's either like a storybook, or it's a game, or it's a movie, an anime, a webtoon, a manga. And like usually that's like the release is like as a main thing first, right? And then they turn into a franchise, and then you release games about it or whatever. And I understand like why that happens, because of course you need to first grow your user base, blah 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 blah. But the way I want to think about like the Nocturne is kind of like, how could we do something where, let's say, an MMORPG game like Genshin Impact or Zelda Breath of the Wild, like something like that. What if it had a baby with like something like Dungeons and Dragons? Like what would that look like? And if you ask me, well, Hannah, what does it look like? It's like, I don't know yet, but it's something that we want to try. Like what if like the first part of this story universe, people experience it as a video trailer, let's say. And then the next part of it is like there's an like a in real life like activation that people would have to go through. And then there's like a continuity online. Like there's this like physical digital release to make it so that like it engages you differently. And you have more room now, I think, with the technology we do have to experiment how we engage audience. And I think, is it a big moonshot dream? Yeah, it is. But I think that's what we're trying to create. It was the project started back in March 2022. That was like our first few auctions. So we have a collection of like profile picture NFTs. Like total supply is like 77. We're at like 43, I want to say. We paused auctions for the longest time, but the first time we released it was back in March 2022. The collection's called like the Daemons. It's like my PFP on Twitter as well. We paused auctions because there was a little bit of like a pivot that we went through. Like we didn't always start with this like fleshed out vision. It started during the era when like the meta was very much like one of one like PFP DAOs that were going to be a launch pad that was also going to be an advisory service that was also a DAO and all of these things. And we had to take the time to kind of like really distill, okay, what are we trying to do? And what of our strengths are we could we actually lean into, and what are we gonna how are we going to take the project forward in a way that's actually meaningful and not just trying to cater to trends or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit about the world itself is like these daemons are kind of like the rulers of the whole this like universe. There's like 5 realms in it. The Nocturne's just one of them. And it's a story about kind of how we think about the world, like just kind of like the world and the relationship of what it means to like navigate, like what adventures could look like if people had a say in like creating their own characters' journeys,
Mm.
kind of. So that's the long-winded spiel. I know you said a little bit about it. I don't know if I gave a little too much, but
No, that's good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we hit on that before we started wrapping up. I have these two questions that I always ask, two or three.
mhm.
So one of them is, who's someone that inspires you?
Okay. Like in the space or just in general?
It could be in
Because this
general.
is a
Yeah, I mean, it could be in general. I always say like it could be in general. It could be in the space. It could be literally anything. In anything in life, who's someone that inspires you in that form of life?
Oh God. Ah, I think like on the point of like G Dragon because I brought him up earlier. Like I really like G Dragon is one of the creatives in this world who is that I think really inspires me. Um, for those in the audience who are not familiar, he's this K-pop idol who was part of this group called Big Bang. That it was a 2010s era K-pop group.
Hmm.
But I think that if I had to point to someone who's like this is what it like the like a creative spirit, like I think that's him. Like he has such a vision of like what it means to be an artist and to be a creative. And he's so when we talked a lot about authenticity and like being true to yourself and like making mistakes and experimenting and learning from those mistakes, like I think he embodies that.
Hmm.
There were a few scandals that he was embroiled in, like, but he kind of like navigated that, picked himself back up. The group, obviously it's an older group, so the members had a period where they had to go on hiatus because of like the military service in South Korea, and then some of the members were embroiled in even worse scandals and just this whole thing. But just the way that he navigates his vision beyond just music and just like himself, like
Yeah.
his brand and how he creates like all the collaborations I have seen him do, and just like the direction, the projects, the collections, whatever that he's done is just both like visual art, fashion, like music, and just in general, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this guy is really like he burns to be a creative, and I
Hmm.
think that
That's dope.
I think that's dope. And that's also why I was just like, oh my God, these shoes are crazy. Like they go so I don't know, again, just to give it a little more color, like the shoes had a layer above it where like the more that you use that and more when it gets rained on or something, that like this outer layer peels off to
Hmm.
reveal like this like graffiti style design
Yeah.
underneath. For those in the audience who aren't familiar with the shoe I'm talking about, like it is so cool. Like I think that's wearable art,
Hmm.
Like I think that's artistic fashion, And I think I was like, oh, man, if I ever get my hands on those, like they would be on a display case. Like I'd use them like they would be like special occasion shoes for me,
Yeah.
Like that's art.
For sure. And then the second question is always, what's like a quote that you live by? We call it the quote of the day here. What's the quote of the day?
It's like this is I'm so happy you asked because for one of the envelope art pieces that I've been like creating for my whole little thing was actually this came from a webtoon and it was just like the direct translation was like the sky is the only thing above you. And so it's this
Mm.
idea that like it's not about like glass ceilings or whatever. It's like the sky is the only thing above you. And I don't know if it's necessarily like I live by it because I came across it like what 2 years ago. So it's not like a forever since like I was young or whatever quote, but it's something that I've been reminded of, especially like the past few months that I want to say like I'm trying to live by that more.
Hmm.
That the sky is literally the only thing above you. And I just absolutely love it.
Yes, that was great. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. We just started doing that, so obviously that's gonna be on like the top, 5 list or whatever. Um,
Like if I
so
don't see this flooding, I don't see you flooding the timeline with this.
no, I
Like I'm
got
gonna
you.
be
I got you.
disappointed. Like
I'll
this is
I'll
quote of the month. All
I'll
right,
cook up the
like
clip. Yeah, I'll cook up the clip. Or at the end of the month, I'll do like awards for like the top. I'll do like a whole video of like the top, 5 quotes from the pod. Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. I like that. But yeah, that
I
was the
got you,
last
bro.
question I got. So do you have anything that you want to leave everyone off with?
Drop your girl a follow for more
W.
fun, chaotic little shits. Like come with me on this adventure with the like Hana world domination, guys.
The adventure of life, just so like she said, everyone, go drop Hannah a follow. It's on this tweet, and if you're watching on YouTube and you made it this far, thank you so much. It's down in the description. I can't say that. I can't say that ever. I can't say that ever. But just like all her links will be down in the description. And go make sure you drop her a follow and you go, buy a piece of hers. Not financial advice. Gotta say that. Gotta keep myself out of some trouble.
Never financial advice, just cultural advice.
Bang! I like that. Boom! I'm gonna start using that one. I'm gonna start using that one too. So I appreciate you guys, and I'll be live in like 30 minutes. But I'll be live again Wednesday with a guest announced tonight or tomorrow.